Hello, my name is John Clark and I will be speaking to you from the perspective of the patient that is requesting to be euthanized. Now I will start off by giving some reasons that somebody may have in choosing euthanasia, and then I will incorporate some stories from individuals that have been affected by not being able to have this choice available to them and the adverse effects that it has. I will finish off by giving my closing arguments on the patient's right to choose. Now, patients must have a valid reason when requesting euthanasia. Assisted suicide is not something for somebody that's feeling a little lovesick or perhaps just a little down. Instead, what it is it's an option for mentally competent individuals that are suffering from a terminal illness or from a loss in quality of life. Now let's take a closer look at some of the reasons that somebody could have in making this decision. One of the reasons would be it can help to ease suffering, as was the case with David Lewis, who took his life in 1990. Now David suffered from AIDS and he decided to commit suicide versus facing a lingering death. Now David was terminally ill with AIDS. He had a stroke, so one side of his body was paralyzed. He was partially deaf and partially blind. He was incontinent. He could not eat any food without immediately throwing it up. He had a rapidly growing brain tumor. He had toxoplasmosis, a festering of the brain, and he complained of the nausea and the pain of the brain tumor. He was expected to die within days or weeks. Now, before he died, this is what David had to say about his decision. "I am not committing suicide. Suicide is when people are emotionally despondent and don't want to live. I am opposed to suicide. What those people need is counseling. I'm a professional counselor. I've helped hundreds of suicidal people come to see that those emotional wounds will eventually heal. I don't want to die. I have to die. All I am doing is adjusting the time of my death a little so that I can die with dignity. This is completely different. We should have a different word for it." Another thing is that it should be the patient's right to choose. Now let's take a look at Debbie Purdy. She's a 45-year-old English lady that's attempting to clarify the law on attempted suicide in England. Now Purdy suffers from multiple sclerosis, in which symptoms become progressively worse over time. And she has said that she wants the option to travel abroad to have an assisted death when her suffering becomes unbearable. Now under current British law, her husband could face 14 years in prison if he accompanied her to a country such as Switzerland where assisted suicide is legal. Now if her husband were to sit with her on the plane to Switzerland, then he would be breaking the law, even if she had made all the arrangements. Now Purdy has said that if her case is not resolved, she may decide to go alone to a clinic while she is still able to on her own. She says she would prefer making the journey much later when her condition is deteriorated so she can die with her husband by her side. Another reason is that it can quickly and humanely cause an end to suffering and allow somebody to die with dignity. Now let's take a look at the Terri Schiavo case. Now Terri Schiavo, she suffered from a heart attack in 1990 which left her brain damaged and totally unable to take care of herself. And after 13 years, with few signs of hope for recovery, her husband was finally given the right to remove her feeding tube. Now in June 2003, after this, her husband had won this right to have the tube removed. President Bush interfered and had the tube reinstated. Now Terry's tube was eventually removed for the third time, and 13 days later she died of dehydration. However, this is not death by voluntary euthanasia, as she was not killed but rather taken off medical support. To be taken off medical support is already a legal act. However, advocates of euthanasia fought to give Terry the right to terminate her life in a peaceful manner. Now had euthanasia been legal, Terry could have died instantly versus the prolonged death of 2 weeks of dehydration and starvation that she ended up having to go through. Another reason is it can help to bring about an end to the pain and suffering of the loved ones individuals more quickly. Assisted suicide is not always about the patient that wants to die. The patient's loved ones can be allowed to spend time with the patient and also say goodbye before this person dies. This can alleviate the problem that occurs when somebody suddenly dies of a terminal illness without people being able to say goodbye. Instead, if somebody just dying suddenly from a terminal illness, the patient is actually given the right to choose when they die. Another big issue is the issue of quality of life. Now, if a person is able to experience happy relationships, can communicate freely, and they're not experiencing unbearable pain, the most rational people would conclude that euthanasia is wrong. But let's take a look at somebody that perhaps doesn't have a terminal illness, but they had a catastrophic accident such as burns to 90% of their body, or a spinal cord injury that has left them paralyzed from the neck down. Now, in these cases, they have a total loss in quality of life. But no matter how much they may sit there and scream, "I want to die, please somebody kill me," they can't. They are trapped with no means of escape, no matter how intolerable their existence might be. Then in these cases, perhaps euthanasia might be the best choice. According to data from the Oregon Public Health Division from 2010, as in previous years, the most frequently mentioned end-of-life concerns were loss of autonomy, 93.8%, decreasing ability to participate in activities that made life enjoyable, 93.8%, and loss of dignity, 78.5%. Now, cost can also be another reason that somebody could choose this option in their life. Take, for instance, the elderly person that would like to leave something to their heirs. Now, if they were to be diagnosed with a terminal illness that's going to take away their ability to live a happy life, then should they be forced to spend all their money to keep themselves alive when once they run out of money they're going to die anyway? This is the case, though, when people are denied the option of choosing euthanasia. Now, as you can see, there are many reasons that exist for someone to choose euthanasia, and people should be able to have the option of euthanasia made available to them when they're making their end-of-life choices, as in the case of Debbie Poudry. Now, the government should not interfere with competent people making these decisions for themselves, because death is a private matter. And if you're not hurting anyone else, then the state should not interfere. Everyone should have the ability to make end-of-life decisions for themselves that they feel are in their best interest. Because in the end, isn't this what medicine's all about? Giving choices to patients so that they can then make the best decisions on which types of care they would prefer. The next person that will speak is Heather Herring. Heather will be providing legal and cultural aspects from the pro-choice side of the argument in euthanasia. Heather will provide historical and present-day data and cultural ideas on the matter, as well as legal aspects and how things have changed over time historically.